My new book is finally out. The main idea is that most nonfiction is written wrong. Not wrong, but using an outdated process. The author takes too much risk. They do too much work up front before they start figuring out if readers actually want it, like it, can understand it, can apply it to their lives. By the time you start getting feedback, you've already invested 6 months, 9 months, and so all the risk is kicked into the future because you're writing this whole book and you don't know if it's going to work or not. What's better is if you can bring that risk and that learning forward. And ideally, you want to figure that out before you've written and edited the whole thing. And when you get that right, it really changes the business model of the book. You can build something that actually grows on its own instead of requiring constant marketing. The reason that I wanted to write this book is because books have been so good for me. I wrote two books so far. I wrote the first in 2013 and the next one in 2019. You can see in the little graph here that this is the first 6 years of royalty growth, and it goes from basically zero up to 10,000 per month. And currently the royalties from that first book are, 12,000, 15,000 a month, depending on the month. And my second book does not quite as well because it hasn't had as much time to grow, but it does pretty well. The reason this is interesting, you can see in the graph at the top, is that most nonfiction, these are New York Times bestsellers, 2,000 of them. And the average New York Times nonfiction bestseller loses 95, 98% of its peak sales within the first year and then never recovers. And this isn't good because you work so hard to write a good book. And if you've only got a 12-week launch window to sell most of your copies, then it's really hard to make it profitable, especially if you're doing it as a part-time thing or you don't have a massive platform. And so my whole thesis about books was, can I find a way to get a curve that looks like this instead of a curve that looks like this? And I don't do that through any clever marketing. I do that through the product design, the testing, the process. You might call it customer development for books or product testing for books. You don't want to be doing book marketing forever as an author because books are inexpensive products. So you sell a book. If you self-publish, you might make $7 profit. If you've got a traditional publisher, you make $1, $1.50 profit. So if you're manually marketing a product that you only clear somewhere between $1 and $7 of profit on, you're never going to make a living. So you basically have to rely on word of mouth. And most authors just hope for it. They go, well, I hope people like it and talk about it. But actually, there's a process behind designing and baking word of mouth into your book. And that's the whole goal of this design process. You do temporary marketing to seed the word of mouth, but then you can stop and your customers, your readers, your fans take it over from there. The way I start thinking about books is in terms of a scope, which is basically a promise or a value proposition plus a reader profile or like who it's for, a customer segment, and then also defining who it's not for and what the book's not trying to do. It's just a value proposition for a book plus a customer segment. Everyone waffles with their original vision of their book and they try to think too broadly. They try to write everything for everyone because they can't bear to leave anyone out. But if you're writing for both beginners and experts, then everything that the beginners love, the experts are going to find boring. And everything the experts love, the beginners are going to find confusing. And so you can't write for everyone. If you do, you just water down your book and you reduce its value per page for any given reader. And so scoping is this process of getting down to a sharp value proposition for a clear reader profile. The main idea of reader experience is that people pay for your book twice. They pay once on the cover and then, the cover price to get the book. And then they pay a second time with their time to actually read it and potentially a third time to put in the effort and the time to actually implement your advice. So the time is the larger of those two prices. And a lot of authors seem to really screw this up because they spend like 20 or 30 pages at the beginning of their book basically trying to justify their credibility and introduce all the underlying theory or the background information. But that's not why the reader bought the book. The reader bought the book to get an outcome or a promise or to solve a problem in their life. And suddenly you're speed bumping them through 30, 40 minutes of just irrelevant stuff. So they start skimming, if they even keep reading at all. And once they start skimming, they typically don't stop. Once you enter skimming mode, you've kind of lost your trust in the author and you're like, okay, this author is not respecting my time, so I'm going to skim pretty aggressively. Whereas if you start with value, and value isn't just something interesting, it's something that moves the reader meaningfully closer to the outcome they wanted when they picked up your book. If you provide pieces of that value, at least every page or two, starting from the very beginning, and the beginning is the most important because that's where they don't trust you yet, that's what keeps people engaged. You don't need to do this storytelling, drama, hooks, mystery. You can, but it's stylistic. That's style. That's not structure. The structure is every couple pages, they're like, oh, wow, I can use this. That's what keeps readers reading and engaged. And you can design your whole thing around this. I use editing tools where I track the number of words relative to the learning outcomes. And if I see that there's too many words between learning outcomes or aha moments, I'm like, ooh, I need to go in there and reduce that. And it creates really strong pacing through the whole book. There's a lot more in the book. I wrote everything I know about books is in here. You know, it's the full toolkit, and I hope you find it helpful. I hope you enjoy it. We also have a community of nonfiction authors. You can get there via writeusefulbooks.com. It's $19 a month. We've got 140 nonfiction authors currently in there, and we're all kind of following the process, helping each other out. So far, about 15 books have launched by community members while they've been a part of the community. It's really fun to see. So I hope you love the book. Let me know if you have questions, and I'm always excited to talk nonfiction, so hit me up.